Hey guys, you might see I'm back in Tanzania, back in Feather's Tail, back where all the little people live. I am still not myself by any measure, and I just want to make a video to tell you all that I'm okay. And for those of you who didn't see the posts on Facebook or in the community section on the YouTube channel, I wanted to make this video and tell you everything that happened, just so you're aware, and also to say thank you for ultimately trying to save my life, which many of you seemingly likely have with what you've shared, be they prayers, well wishes, or of course the resources to pay for the treatment. So as you all know, I had a problem with my heart. Now, I had an MRI eventually. We had the MRI done, and such as East Africa, the only man in Nairobi who could read the MRI was sick, so I had to wait 4 days. It was very frustrating, 4 days, trying to find out, or waiting to find out, if the left ventricle of my heart was permanently damaged. So what basically happened was I began to have chest pain a lot, and then I started to get a lot of trouble breathing, and I was breathing so deep and my heart was pounding at a much higher rate than normal, and I've still got that problem now. And the basic initial tests without the MRI couldn't confirm whether I had already had a heart attack for sure or not. And the tests you would do on the blood, actually the markers for a heart attack are the same as the markers for the parasites I have, so it was a waste of time. So I hadn't actually had a heart attack, and I thank God for that. But I came unbelievably close to a point of no return twice. My heart function went down, and my heart function was 3% away from failure. It's since climbed back up and started working properly. And what happened is I have babesiosis. Now, I have African babesiosis, which is a little bit different than the Western one. They're still just as horrendous no matter where in the world you are. But to give you an idea, babesiosis has just killed 600 animals at the national park here, 4 of which were rhino and some were water buffalo and stuff like of this nature. So, Sambu, wait, I'm busy. So if that little parasite can take out a rhinoceros or a water buffalo, then I thank God that I'm still with you and I'm still alive. So because of the babesiosis, I have problems with my autonomic nervous system. My body can no longer work out correctly blood volume and blood pressure. And my red blood cells are so big that they can't enter my capillaries. Not all, but nearly all are so big, so there's a few normal ones. That forces your heart to work overtime to get the red blood cells to the organs it needs to carry the oxygen. On top of that, my bronchial tubes are not dilating, so when I breathe I don't pull the oxygen in correctly either. So I have a home oxygen kit until I conquer this parasite. I also have Lyme, which is in my heart, Lyme bacteria, Borrelia, the correct name. And that in itself is a problem on top of the babesia. They both come in the same way. Here you can get infected though with babesia by mosquitoes as well, which you can't happen in the West, I believe. It doesn't happen. And if you compile all that into one thing, the large red blood cells, the heart working faster to get the oxygen around, the fact I'm not pulling oxygen in when I breathe, and then I was taking the medication to kill the bacteria, and I killed the bacteria in my heart, which created an inflammatory response from my confused immune system. It's been fighting this thing for so long. They say I must have had this years and years, and I've just not been diagnosed, and I've not treated it, so I'm proud of my body for doing what it's done. And just for everybody out there, I know you mean well, but no, eating meat is not the problem, and it never will be the problem. Every single doctor who's seen me, who's Lyme literate, has told me to eat no dairy and no meat because it's inflammatory and I need to have anti-inflammatory. It's got nothing to do with nutritional choices. If anything, I've stayed on my feet longer, I believe, because I eat the way I do, because it's anti-inflammatory and it's the diet that's recommended for treating what I've got. So please, I know you mean well, but it's got nothing to do with it. I have a parasite in my blood trying to kill me. That's it. Tries to kill the host by destroying the white blood cell, their red blood cells. It doesn't try to, it's just trying to live. But in doing that, it kills its host, unfortunately. So when you compile all of that and my heart swelled up, what happened was my left ventricle constricted under the swelling. So imagine you've got whatever size ventricle, obviously not that big, and then it comes smaller, 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 to the degree where the ejection fraction was too low and I was close to heart failure. And when you add that to everything else, my blood oxygen was so far down that I was a little bit delirious when they took me to hospital in Tanzania. And then I had the echo done the next morning and got the bad news. So thanks to wonderful friends all around us here in Tanzania, I was airlifted, as you know. And on the airlift, I nearly died on the airlift. The change in altitude and the low blood oxygen just totally messed me up. And the American nurse was forcing me to chew aspirin to thin my blood to avoid me having a heart attack. And that's how small my left ventricle had gotten. I couldn't get, coupled with the problem I'm having with the bronchial tubes and the red blood cells, I couldn't get the oxygen around my body I needed. And by the time I got to Nairobi, I was shaking quite violently on the stretcher. When they took me, there was an aeroplane that got me in the end, not a helicopter, because it was faster, to get clearance, that is. So by the time I reached Nairobi, I was shaking uncontrollably, and then everything calmed down. With the nitrous and the aspirin, kind of the pain subsided a bit, and then I was admitted to cardiac ward, and I stayed there for a week under monitoring, where we have now left, of course. And the problem I'm now facing is I have developed, first of all, the bacteria is quite embedded in my heart, so I have to kill the bacteria slowly without killing myself. If I hadn't done by myself intravenous corticosteroids to reduce the inflammatory response in my body, which I don't agree with steroids, but they saved my life, and I was 3% away. My left ventricle was nearly closed, and if I hadn't took those steroids, it would have closed on me. Likewise, which I said on Facebook, if my heart had plaque in it, which it does not because I'm vegan, heart disease is a lifestyle choice in the most part. Most people with blocked arteries, it's the lifestyle choice, the same as diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle choice. These are things that come from the food you eat. And my arteries, had they had the plaque in that a meat eater does, then I'd have been dead now, quite simply, because I didn't have much space left to go. And I'm not doing it to promote veganism. Maybe I'm just saying how it is. This is the science of it. And I think it's important that we look after these things in us. I mean, I've looked after my health because I know science and I'm up to date on the modern science. Now, other people's bodies might work better and you might need to eat meat. That in that way you can do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't if that's what you want to do, but I'm saying don't eat too much, yeah? Watch your arteries, be careful of it. Because a sedentary vegan has better heart health than a running carnivore. That's a proven scientific fact. So just be cautious how much you take in, because you never know, you're going to get bit by a stupid insect like I have here in the line of duty working with God, and it creates swelling and closes up my arteries. And had I not been doing what I've been doing these last years, I would be dead now. I'd be dead because there'd have been no space in my left ventricle to push the blood out. So each to their own. I don't want to get into all that on here, but if you're suffering with Lyme and Babesia, first of all, you need to eat predominantly plants for the anti-inflammatory side of it. But look after yourselves, guys. You never know. Life is so fragile. And I nearly died 2 times in the last 10 days, 11 days. And such a small gap, such a small amount of space. And it happened because of an insect biting me. Parasite ultimately biting me. And I have this tiny little window of near death, and had my heart been any more unhealthy, had I not been a runner and stuff as well, then I'd have been dead now. So look after yourselves, you know, exercise, go for a walk, ride your bicycles, go for a run, try to eat healthy, you know, and do some study and reading about up-to-date science and where we are with it all, and do what's best for yourself, because you really don't want to leave this place too soon. You know, the other place is just as good, but your loved ones are here. You know, I can't hold my boy from the other side. I can't hold my wife. I can't hold these children. And I see everything with quite fresh eyes at the moment. It's like a bit of a renewal for me in many things. You know, on the plane I saw thousands and thousands of white lights swirling, tiny white lights swirling all around outside the window of the plane as we were flying through the clouds. And I felt the presence of relatives that have passed on as well, and I was heading that way. My whole head was numb, my arms, my legs weren't working, there was no oxygen in my body. I was about to die. And I said to Fritzy that the feeling of the other side is something I miss, because it's like fasting times infinity. Just the peace, the humility of it all. I was just crushed by it. But I came back from the brink. I came back from what was the edge, ultimately. And I'm now grateful that I did. But not long after that, at the time, I said to Fritzy, you know, it's almost addictive. I want to go back to that feeling. So just be careful, look after yourselves, yeah, guys. You just don't know what's around the corner. You know, a year ago I was spitting out marathons for fun. Now I can only walk 5 minutes and my heart rate gets up to 170 beats per minute from a 5-minute walk. When I stand up, it's doing 110 to 130 just from standing. Post-orthostatic tachycardia. It's not my heart muscle. Thank God there's no permanent damage, no laceration to the ventricle. The swelling's gone down, the heart started working again. It's my autonomic nervous system that's causing the problems for me at the moment, so but I'm tackling that in my own time, and it will recover once I get over the Lyme and Babesia, which again is going to take time. So I'm alive, and I have very fresh eyes on the world at the moment. I'm very grateful for every tiny thing that I'd forgotten to be grateful for over these years. And I promote gratitude as the best attitude, but I'm just grateful for everything. Even holding this stone in my hand, I'm grateful to feel its sharp edges. I'm grateful my skin is soft to make it sharp. I'm just deeply grateful for everything I'm encountering. Perhaps it was needed, you know. I went through a very difficult couple of weeks, and I said, I'm sure it's not the will of God that I'm so sick, but I had to evaluate whether it might have been, you know, because, yeah, it would be cruel for God to make people sick, but you would also say it would look cruel when a parent locks a child in a room who's addicted to drugs. But it's coming from a place of love, despite the suffering they're going through inside the room. We know, in the end, it's a place of love. So I had to evaluate that and suss out whether there was something I was missing or whatever, but God's worked so hard to heal me. I know it wasn't his plan for me to be like this. We shall say it's the plan of the adversarial energy of this world, which again we should be grateful for, because every state of adversary that you go into is an opportunity to grow. And I've grown in 2 weeks. I know I have. I've changed in a good way. Renewed, reset some stuff in me that needed resetting. So, anyway, my heart's not permanently damaged. I need a blood plasma exchange. It's gotten so far with the toxins from the parasites in my body, but I'm not safe to fly yet, so I need to recover here. I'm getting a full-time nurse to help me with my medication, because there's so many, and there's a lot of intravenous stuff as well. And then I will go to Germany for the plasma exchange and potentially a blood transfusion as well, where they take my blood out and put fresh blood in, purely because then I'll get fresh red blood cells that are not full of Babesia trying to kill me, and it'll help me thin out the numbers to hit them hard with the anti-malarials and the antibiotics. At this stage in proceedings, anti-malarials and antibiotics are a gift from God. Herbs do not cut. I've read everything on herbs, and when you're chronic, even the herbalists like Boona recommend that you move to the things that are a bit more toxic for you, of course. however, do have a success rate of closer to 100%, whereas herbs are like 60-70%. So I have to take them. I have no choice, and it's a blessing they exist, or you would be watching me die over the next month, without a doubt, because the babesia is chronic. Babesia has a 43% mortality rate in the West. Here it's probably higher, I don't know. But you'd be watching me die now if we didn't have that modern medication. So I hate Big Pharma's way of doing things and its corruption, but those men and women who use their intelligence in a laboratory to create something that does its job to kill malaria, to kill babesia, to kill bacteria, to kill deadly bacteria that used to make us die in horrendous way, like leprosy and syphilis and Lyme disease, then I'm eternally grateful that God channeled their light through them whilst they worked in those laboratories, you know. And yeah, I give great thanks to the people doing that, because I wouldn't be here without them at the moment, without any shadow of a doubt. So, yeah. Long live science, and long live the spiritual world, and long live God. It has to be a union. It has to be a union. So I'm here, I'm well, I've rambled on a bit, my brain's still spongy, so I'm sorry if I'm a bit all over. I'm going to try and pick up on the videos because I've missed doing them. I enjoy doing them, but I'm not going to exhaust myself too much. And God has got my back here, without a doubt. I tell you something, God comes in all forms to all people. Never let anyone put God in a box for you. Never let anyone tell you God only comes in that form to this person, because you don't know the childhood they've gone through. I know people who have contacted me who can't get with Christianity because they were abused in the church and stuff like this. And I say, if you can't get with Christianity, you get silent like Jesus asked you to. And the imagery that will suit you is the imagery God will use to communicate with you. And that is how it works. You know, that is exactly how it works. People who seek God, God will respond to them because he knows how their filter works. If you've got someone who's completely lost all hope in Christian symbology and has been attacked and abused whilst under the care of Christian institutions, God won't come to them with Christian symbology that will make them uncomfortable. He won't do it. He'll come to them with what makes them comfortable. And while I laid in my hospital bed, you know, I get feathers. I get feathers, butterflies, pennies from heaven, as we say. Songs at certain times, videos appearing at certain times, people sharing right information at the right time. And I was there, and two hawks appeared outside my hospital window in Nairobi. And Francis, who flew with me from Tanzania to make sure I was okay, a guy I work with and a good friend now as well, I dare say, I said to him, my spirit birds are here. And the two hawks were there, and it was just God saying, hey, you're good, you know. And actually, when I tried to record this video, but I kept coughing, I had pleurisy. I developed pleurisy with all the inflammation. I was very low immunity, and we thought I had pneumonia, but I never, thankfully. And it's just a virus I was fighting. So I didn't really want to upload it because it was just frustrating to edit it with me coughing so much. And even while I was doing that, at the end, I spoke about the spirit bird, and the video on the spirit bird flew past my window. My spirit bird, my hawk, you know, it flew past my window in Nairobi. Camera's become a little bit of my friend, and somehow sharing stories becomes a little bit of therapy as well, if you will. So, my guys. And it was also sitting outside on the tree quite often at my hotel room. So it followed me from hospital to hotel, you know, and things like that, they bring me great comfort, and it's no accident, it's no mistake. And those angles of light come down from the sun, you know, the sun in the sky, the Son of God. When those angles of light travel down and they bring those photons, then they are the messengers of God, they are the angels, they are the messengers of light, the angles of light, the photons. They are a union. There's just a difference in language, and they can enter into these animals, they can enter into us and guide us, and the same with animals. And I've no doubt that those beings surrendered themselves briefly to allow and the angels to put them in location to bring me comfort. So God brings his signs in whatever way will work for you. Never let someone put God in a box for you. Never. I've practiced many spiritual practices, unlike people who put stuff in boxes. And when you've practiced as many spiritual practices as me, trying to find the truth, you realise that they all end up at the same end point, and that is a union with the very same loving God. Unless you're doing the dark spiritual practices, then you'll find a union with the dark God. So. But they all end up with the same loving God. Every time. There's no difference in the feeling. There's no difference in the way that God works. There's no difference in the way he answers your prayers. There's just a difference in the filters of us humans and how we try to describe that end goal, that end union we find with God when we're working with him and serving him. So. But anyway, I'm alive. I'm alive. And it was a close call. It was a very close call. And I just say, look after yourselves. Take that time on a Sunday to go for the extra hour's walk. Take the time to eat things that are a little more healthily cooked for you. Or eat things that are a little more healthy in general for you. And look after yourselves, guys. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know it. Limit yourselves on the unhealthy stuff, you know. In America, the chance of a vegan having heart disease is 4%, vegetarian 14%, carnivore 50%. And that's because they're eating too much of it. I've no doubt you can have a healthy heart and eat meat. I'm not stupid to say you can't. But you have to eat a small amount like we did in nature. It was never a daily occurrence. We were never that good a hunter. Just look at the hunter-gatherer tribes here. Success rate of 3%. So just watch what's happening around the world and look after yourselves. All of you, because it doesn't matter how old you are, parasite can come along and bite you on the leg, and then you'll take the medication, your heart swells up, and if your heart's not healthy enough, if you haven't been exercising, then it's game over. And my boy would never have known me, you know. And just because of a stupid thing biting you like that. Life's fragile. No matter how close to God you are, we're all humans and life is fragile. So, death's not to be feared. Something you should make friends with. Without any shadow of a doubt. I'm shaking because my arm's been out for so long. Death should be your friend, not an enemy. Not something to be feared, but for all it should be your friend, it's still in our nature to not want it. Even for the religious folks out there who very much believe in going to heaven and life thereafter, or spiritual folks as well. Or even those who believe that they'll be reincarnated and if they've done good they'll get a better life. You'll still find that it's our automatic reaction to try and sidestep death. Because you only get one shot as you, as far as we know. Like, there's a parallel universe filled with Johns doing different stuff, who knows, but for now, all I know is this point of awareness and consciousness. I get one shot at this life. And a few years extra here and there can make a difference. As I've seen from 2014 to where we are now, you can make a difference in this world if you're doing and working and acting in line with divine guidance. Then you can make a difference. So it's worth looking after yourself to live an extra 4, 5, 10 years. It's worth it. Who knows what you can achieve in that extra time, you know? A very precious gift. The sun rising and the sun setting those 365 times a year on your life it's a very important gift. Always make sure that you can't count how many of those sunrises and sunsets you've seen. If you can count how many you've seen this year, then you're making a mistake. Really, you are. If you can't quickly count how many movies you've watched this year, you're making a mistake. It should be the other way around. You should not be able to count how many beautiful sunsets you've watched. And you should be able to count on one hand how many movies you've took in. I know I can do it that way. So you should be able to as well. Because, I mean, when you're truly in line, you don't need anything else. You just need a good sunset and trees and nature, and you're set. So, right. Been holding that cough in for a while. I love you all. I'm okay for now. Having a few issues with the medication and stabbing pains in my heart, so obviously the bacteria is dying again, but I won't take the medication as heavily, which should see me okay. I have home oxygen, I have corticosteroids to stop it if it happens again. My heart muscle is strong, very strong, as they said on the MRI. It was just swollen from the inflammatory response because my immune system's not the cleverest thing in the world after it's been fighting this for so long. So I'm going to start doing some pranic breathing to help my autonomic nervous system. And I was doing Wim Hof before, but my friends who were Jain and Hindu in town, who helped me as well tremendously. All the people who helped me here was unbelievable, guys. People missed nights of sleep, people I hadn't seen for years, turning up with phone numbers for helicopters. My friends spending the night in hospital with me. Just unbelievable, as well as all the support you guys have had. And I was blown away by all of it. And without it, I couldn't be able to get the plasma treatment on my blood. Not without leaving here for 6 months to a year to live in England, which this place really can't afford for me to do. So, because it's just a correlation between donations and videos, just the way it works at the moment, until God sees fit to find a new way. So there was loads of help, but in among there, my friends, Remy and Jay, they helped me with the Medivac, and they are qualified in teaching pranic breathing and pranayama. So this is going to be a huge part of my healing process. I know it is, because they suggested it, and then someone sent me an email. So if you're watching, I'm sorry I haven't replied, my head's stuffy, but someone sent me an email not long after they suggested it, and I took that 2 hits as a synchronicity to say this is the right direction to get control over your autonomic nervous system again. So I'll be using that a lot, so I'll share that journey with you all as well, and hopefully you'll start to see me looking a bit more energetic over the coming weeks, months. Hopefully in the next year I'll recover, but it's going to be a long journey, and we'll see what bridges we have to cross whilst I walk that journey. And until then, my whole family are on the same continent, my son, my wife, my other children, so I'm happy to be here. And just getting ready for me to be able to fly, so I can go and have the plasma exchanged in my blood, and then start again, maybe with a blood transfusion as well, we don't know, and then start again hitting me with antibiotics, which I'm already taking small doses, but heavier doses, killer doses, instead of maintenance doses like I'm doing now. So yeah, anyway, like I said, I've a lot going on, and probably boring, incoherent video, but I just let me get it out there because I know a lot of you are messaging asking if I'm okay. So I love you all, and thank you again for ultimately trying to save my life. And without you, we'd have had a huge problem. So eternally grateful, and eternally grateful I'm in this position where I can go and get such treatment as what I had in Nairobi and go and get my blood plasma done, because without these things the likelihood is I'd be dying here. You know, the babesia is pretty harsh in my body at the moment. So. But despite all that, despite the tricks of this adversarial energy, which I believe has done this to me in his cheeky ways, life goes on here. The children's home is still getting built, the children are still getting fed. Our crops failed due to bad weather, unfortunately. But aside from that, we've had only positive news here. So, yeah. Can knock me down, but I got back up. That's the important thing. Because the thing is, when you do get back up from being knocked down, if you get back up in the right way, you're always going to be stronger than when you were pushed. Every single time. So if he wants to try and knock me again, let him knock me. I'll only get stronger. And over the years, I'm sure he'll come at me again. But let him come at me, because I'll only get stronger. Love you all.